You are change makers, and we feel very proud of all of you, because despite all the challenges, you are working every single day to make possible this transformation. Climate change is one of the challenges that humanity is facing, but it also represents a unique opportunity to build a transformational change.
I recently had a baby and everyone was saying, oh, our new climate activist, and I was saying, no, I hope my baby doesn't have to do climate activism, because if he did, then I failed. Because climate change is not a hobby, unfortunately, it's a problem that we need to solve, and if he continued solving the problem that I and his mother tried to solve, and also the generation before us also tried to solve, then all of this generation just failed doing it.
My message to young people is that we have the biggest and the most innovative demographic in the world. We are capable of driving the necessary urgency and groundbreaking solutions to address the climate crisis.
We've got to get the message right.
Underutilized. So my call, my request, my begging to you is today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, jump on that bandwagon and drive it. I thank you very much indeed. I wish you a very great time.
The Youth Adapt Challenge is an annual competition for youth-led organizations that have smart climate adaptation solutions. It is jointly organized by GCA and AFDB under the AAAP Youth Adapt program. We recently won the Youth Adapt Challenge, Africa, among other 15 companies, and as a micro-enterprise, this means a lot to us. It means growth for our company. It will increase the product range of the climate-resilient varieties that we are able to propagate for the farmers. It means increased sales, moving our company to another level, and also the outreach to the smallholder farmers. As we conduct training and as we do farm fields, we are able to bring on board the innovations that they really need towards climate-smart agriculture. As a youth-led organization, we have faced many
So if everybody can get seated indeed and treat this agenda and this meeting as an emergency as it is, because we want to get started as quickly as possible. Our host Prime Minister is here. And goes to you here. Adaptation.
We have to adapt.
We have to adapt, please.
Okay, very good.
You're gonna make a short you're gonna say something again, right? Good. Yes, brief. You come back because you kept us in suspense. We're waiting for President Tshisekedi, and obviously it's very important that he is with us when we start. So I'm looking for the staff in the back, just to give us an update. So, Mr. Prime Minister, we're not officially opening the meeting yet. We will do that when the President of DRC is here. But just to give you a little bit of an update what has happened, so we can just skip that during the formal opening, the closing segment, if you allow me at least. I think this morning was an extraordinary meeting. Why? Because we have the African leaders here present here in Europe, actually here in the Netherlands, in fact, in the capital of Rotterdam. So we had a very good, robust conversation, and quite frankly, it was very Dutch, Mr. Prime Minister, because it was Dutch, as it should be, because it was very direct. It was not formal at all. The leaders around the table came with a very clear plan, as you know, the African Adaptation Plan, and what we have been going through this morning is to see, de facto, you only can raise your flag if you have something to contribute to the plan. So that was basically the essence of the meeting this morning. We have a little bit of a suspense with France here coming up very soon, so let us all be waiting. But we had very strong commitments from Norway, from the United Kingdom, from WTO, from the IMF, from the African Development Bank. It's very exciting, but I mean the essence is, Mr. Prime Minister, is it enough? My answer to that is not yet. Are we in the right direction? Absolutely so. So when the President of DRC is here, we will start the formal closing segment.
But I heard also the energy was there.
The energy was there because we kept each other here until 2:15.
Dextro energy.
For all of us combined.
Yeah.
I'm just checking one final time on the President of DRC. Whether he is his estimated. Okay, no, we can't wait for that. Why are we going to start? Because right now we have a person with us who has been leading this agenda for many, many years. We have a person with us who has constituted the Global Center on Adaptation during his tenure. We have a leader with us who not only believes in this agenda, but also delivers on this. So as a Dutch person, full transparency, also on behalf of my mentor, Feike Siebersma, and Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and Kristalina, and Ngozi, and perhaps even Mr. Timmermans. We're extremely humbled having you here today with us, Mr. Prime Minister. Well, and just also full transparency, there are very high expectations from African leaders for what you have to say right now. So we're building up the pressure for your moment, this crescendo moment. So Mr. Mark Rutte, Prime Minister of the Netherlands, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much. And I mean, the energy you're again putting into this, and all of you, is really invigorating and is giving me great confidence that we can somehow fight this whole challenge. And if we couldn't, why would we be here? So first of all, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor of Rotterdam, who is here, and so many others, the First Vice President of the European Commission, the IMF, the presidents of Ghana, of Senegal, of the DCR. I mean, I'm really Secretary General, Feike, so many others. I'm so happy to see all of you. And let me first of all say thank you for coming to Rotterdam. And this is really a landmark event, hosted, as you know, by the Global Center of Adaptation. And this is also because we need to lay somehow the foundation stone for an ambitious adaptation outcome for Africa at the COP27, which will take place in Egypt. And we all have those dates in our calendar and our agenda later this year. And let me say, I applaud all your leadership that you are willing to work on this and to drive this agenda forward. Because this commitment to climate resilient solutions on the African continent is, I believe, urgently needed. Of course, it's no accident that the GCA's global office is located in Rotterdam. The Netherlands is, I think, one of the global adaptation champions. And of course, as you know, Rotterdam is often hailed as the adaptation capital of the world. Not of the Netherlands, as you said, that's Amsterdam still, but at least of the world. Otherwise, we get a problem with the mayor of Amsterdam. And as you know, much of this country lies below sea level. Most of you landed on Schiphol Airport, which is, I think, 4 meters below sea level. So we have centuries of experience managing water and growing food in a low-lying delta. It's in our history. So we always had to be agile and flexible in responding to all the forces of nature. Over the centuries, adaptation has become a way of life for us here in the Netherlands, and an everyday reality. We simply had no other choice. Of course, today we all face new challenges, ones that will test us to the limit. Like other countries, also this country, the Netherlands, is not immune to the impact of climate change, not at all. So we need to continue adapting, preparing, and also responding. And we do so, and we are keen to share our knowledge and expertise on this. And we want to learn from you, because you have your expertise, you have your knowledge, and we have somehow to combine the two. And therefore, it's crucial that we need to rise to the biggest global challenge of our time and scale up adaptation solutions, but also investments. And this was one of the key things being discussed today. And I've been lobbied by Jan Peter, my predecessor, and by Feike and others. And of course, we also want to put our money where our mouth is. And the only way to do that, I think, is not only money, but also collaborating, exchanging knowledge and know-how, and by forging partnerships. Of course, I would have loved to have more of my European colleagues here, and I know that some of you have discussed today that not many are here. Well, none of them, but at least some of the countries are represented at a very senior level. And I think we have to think this through, how in the future we can work on the COPs and making sure that we have as many as possible leaders there, but also on the in-between meetings, how we somehow calibrate those, that we have as many leaders present as possible. I know that many want us to come, but simply I think the attendance has not been at a level we would have loved to. But of course you are here, I'm here, so we have the best people in the room. The African continent, as we all know, because that's what you're focusing on, Patrick, is on the front line of a climate emergency. And it did not create that climate emergency. Africa simply did not create it. So the international community and development partners, we need all to step up our game and provide the support and indeed also provide the finance that are desperately needed. I was happy with the progress being made in Glasgow, and particularly last year with the adoption of the Glasgow Climate Pact, in which nations pledged a doubling, and I know, Christine, you've also been working on this, a doubling of adaptation finance. Delivering on this pledge is, I think, now our biggest collective priority. And let me assure you, of course, this country, the Netherlands, is committed to this cause. We are at this moment spending more than half of our public climate budget on adaptation and resilience. And the vast majority of this spending is now geared towards Africa, and rightly so. And I'm pleased to announce that we will significantly increase our budget for climate finance over the next few years, as we need to do so. And we also will continue allocating more than half of it to adaptation. Ah, there's our colleague again. Good to see you again. Hi. And yet, we all know that more is needed. Other countries will have to pick up the pace too. So that means that we will also step up climate diplomacy on adaptation. And your successor, Secretary General at the UN, the present Secretary General, has very much pressured me and Sigrid Kaag, my colleague in the Dutch cabinet, and others in the previous team, to work on the climate diplomacy and making sure that we build this coalition. That's one of the reasons why we found the guy in the Netherlands with the most energy, Patrick, to be part of this whole endeavor, to make sure that we bring as much energy together as possible. Last year, in close cooperation with the GCA, of course, we hosted the first ever Leaders Summit dedicated to climate adaptation and also raising the level of, let's say, the political ambition. And since then, we have seen the spearheading of the Champions Group on Adaptation Finance, with the aim of increasing, because that's crucial, the quantity, quality, but also the accessibility. And I know that is also a subject of particular importance of adaptation finance. What we now need to do is to lead by example and persuade other donor countries, but also multilateral institutions, the private sector, and also the global finance community at large, to bridge the adaptation finance gap for Africa, which is, as we all know, and you've debated it also today, is still there. And this also dovetails with the Tajikistan 2023 UN Water Conference, which we as Netherlands will co-host together with Tajikistan. And also that event will address challenges and opportunities, as well as supporting further action to achieve water and also adaptation-related goals. So, Patrick, to conclude, I would like to say we still have a long way to go. You basically also made that point in your introduction. You can count on the Netherlands to continue to champion the global adaptation agenda. It's our life interest. If we won't do it, you would see Schiphol Airport underwater. So there is a fierce urgency of now to do this, but also together with you. And together we need to achieve an ambitious outcome for Africa at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh and beyond. So my closing plea would be, let's keep working together on the money, but also on how to spend it and the accessibility, and also to learn from you and from us, from two ways, eye to eye, on how we can best deal with this whole issue. And we all know it's crucial. I thought this was a good speech, and I count on a warm applause. Thank you.
It's not, Prime Minister, it's not just a good speech, it's not just an inspiring speech, but it is also a practical speech. Because being a practical leader of a practical country, having 50% of your climate finance envelope going to climate adaptation, you're quite unique in that regard indeed. The hope and perhaps even the homework for all of us, including for the Netherlands, is to translate that practicality now to a specific program which the African leaders have called for, the African Adaptation Acceleration Program. I know you're very much on top of this and we look forward to concrete outcomes comes COP27 indeed. Do we have time? Yes, we do, because we still have a couple of weeks to deliver on this together. Let's go from one leader to the other. Happens to be also a Dutch citizen. Extraordinary important role he has bringing the European continent together on this agenda. Excessively practical, very ambitious, bold leader. Mr. Timmermans, first Vice President, European Commission indeed.
Thank you very much. You got one thing right, bold is right. Thank you for inviting me, and it really is a pleasure to be here. And you know, nobody denies now that the climate crisis is man-made. But one of the perfidities of this man-made crisis is that those who had no role in making it are suffering most of the consequences of this climate crisis. And Africa, obviously, is a case in point. That is why what we discussed and decided in Glasgow last year was so extremely important. The Prime Minister already mentioned it, the Glasgow Climate Pact, but also the global goal on adaptation that we decided there, the promises that were made to drastically increase the spending on adaptation, to look seriously at the issue of loss and damage. All this, I believe, is extremely important, and as important as looking at the issue of mitigation, which is the responsibility of the major emitters. Now, last week, Alok Sharma and I were at the G20 in Bali, and I salute Alok. Great that he's here, because he played a crucial role in Glasgow last year, and you did a brilliant job, Alok, bringing the world together at that time. But I think, Alok, I speak also on your behalf when I say that we were really disappointed by some of the positions taken in the G20 last week in Bali on climate. Some of the very, very big players on this planet are trying to row back from what they had agreed in Glasgow last year, and that should be a huge point of concern for all of us. And some of them, even the biggest emitter on this planet, try and hide behind developing countries in using arguments that I think at some point are no longer viable. If you're responsible for almost 30% of emissions, you cannot say, but I'm a developing country, so don't look at me. And I don't think anybody is helped by that attitude, because it undermines our efforts for adaptation if we don't look at that more seriously. But having said all that, as a European and as a representative of the European Commission, I have to tell you very, very frankly, I made the moral point at the beginning of my introduction now, saying that those suffering the most consequences are not responsible for creating the crisis, which puts the onus on those who were responsible, which are the countries that have profited from fossil fuels for over 200 years. But if you don't buy that moral argument, and I have to say, let's be frank, many of our citizens in Europe will not buy this argument today because their worries are linked to their own existence. In this energy crisis, in this food crisis, in this inflation crisis. Now, this might seem very strange from an African perspective, but it's always what is closer to your own worries is always bigger on your agenda than somebody else's worries. So I would argue there's other arguments that we should be using much more, especially in Europe, and saying, and I'm deeply convinced of this, without success in Africa, there can be no success in Europe. Our destinies are so intimately intertwined that if we are not collectively responsible for the development of Africa, for Africa being able to use the opportunities it has, we will still be intertwined without doing anything, and we will sink together in an ocean of despair. So I believe that is the strongest argument for those who are not sensitive to the moral argument, to say it's self-interest. It is in our collective interest to make sure that we bring the knowledge that is needed, that we bring the investment that is needed. And at the heart of all of this, I strongly believe, is bringing electricity to 600 million Africans who today have no access to energy. And that's the big, big plus of renewable energy today. It is cheap, it is accessible, it is something companies want to invest in, it is something that can be put on grid, on smaller grids, off-grid, but it can offer the access to electricity, which is also the access to development to people who today do not have that. What needs to happen for that? We need to build up a capacity we don't have today, because there will be a huge demand globally for solar panels, for wind turbines, for all the transmission technology that is necessary. And we need to team up with Africa to make sure the knowledge is shared, the industrial capacity is shared, the primary products are shared, but not in the traditional way, that one side delivering the primary products and the other side then adding value and selling it back. That would be such a historic mistake. But sharing from the offset the industrial development that is linked with this new industry. And let me end on something that comes afterwards, because I fully understand the worry in many African countries. Yeah, you talk about renewables, but we need to have a baseload. We all need to have a baseload, and in Africa that baseload for some time will be linked to a fossil fuel, hopefully the cleanest form of fossil fuel, which is gas, certainly not coal, hopefully not too much oil. But in the long run, the big opportunity for Africa will be to use this enormous potential of solar and wind, which will go way beyond Africa's own needs, and put that energy into hydrogen or ammonia or other fuels that will be. I'm sure global shipping within a generation will completely run on ammonia. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Many of our industries, whether it's cement, steel, name them, where you need high caloric industrial production, will be based on hydrogen and green hydrogen in the future. This will recreate the global economy. It will make us independent of certain people trying to blackmail us with the reserves they have of fossil fuel, which is the reality of today. And it will make Africa a powerhouse of the energy of the future. This is my vision of the future, but the future starts today. So if we want to be credible on this, we have to increase our finance on adaptation. I will fight for this also in the European Commission. The lead time between the invitation of this conference and the conference itself for a, no pun intended, oil tanker as the European Commission is too small for me to be able to pledge directly, but I think we will be able, by the time that we have COP27, to be more concrete. And I'm looking forward to work with Werner Hoyer, who's a visionary on this investment side, with the African Development Bank, with everyone who has an idea about this, to make this a great success. And let me repeat and end on that. Our destinies, whether we like it or not, are interlinked, and we owe it to our children and grandchildren to recognize that and to act upon that as of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, First Vice President of the European Commission, Mr. Timmermans, for your very inspiring words, indeed, a very practical way forward. Mr. Prime Minister Rutte, honourable presidents, as I said, we're being left a little bit in suspense this morning because we're expecting to receive a message from President Macron. President Macron, of course, is a friend of Africa and has sent his senior minister to us today. Chrysula, please, no longer keep us in suspense.
Merci. Merci, Patrick. Thank you so much, Patrick. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of states, after having listened to you all, I think we are extremely aware that we are in a state of emergency, of climate emergency, and that we need to fight against global warming. As you said, Mr. Commissar, we are interdependent, and there is no time to wait anymore. We are at the bottom of the wall. We really must act now as regards the climate. Also, when you look at the terrible unfairness regarding climate change, most of the least developed countries are usually the lowest polluters, but the highest affected countries, who does not see displaced populations and the gap that are getting bigger and bigger between developed and least developed countries. And this unfairness, the African countries reminded us of that during the latest COP meetings. And we share this concept of unfairness towards Africa with our African partners. I would like to say that under the influence of Macron, I would like to say in his name that France is fully committed to the acceleration of adaptation for Africa. And we have raised our commitments to ensure for developing countries to fight against climate change. A quarter of this effort is specifically dedicated to adaptation, meaning 2 billion euros, and a third of the funds are specifically dedicated to Africa. France takes fully its role, and we also we also call other states to do the same. And I congratulate you, Patrick, of this mobilization today, and also all the participants, all the people present at this meeting. So let's be frank, let's be honest. The road will be harsh ahead of us. We need to go further and together. That's why I am happy to announce that France will bring 10 billion euros to the Adaptation Acceleration in Africa program over 2 years. France will be amongst the top donors for this initiative. And this commitment will enable us to prepare adaptation projects everywhere on Africa, on the African continent, and also to create a great leverage to ensure we will mobilize up to 1 billion euros. These efforts will also be practical. It will support projects created as regards within the scope of this initiative. Indeed, for instance, as President Macron said, the farm initiative and also the Great Green Wall. And also, we are fully mobilized to ensure that we will fund the projects for the acceleration for adaptation in Africa. Finally, dear Patrick, this program will enable us to have African solutions which will respond to the needs of the African continent. It is exactly the type of tools that we want to have at the core of this new partnership between Europe and Africa to ensure that we will find solutions for the meeting we had between us in last February. Therefore, warmly thank all the GCA to have convened us and gathered us today, and also the Gabon initiatives a few days ago. Also, we have several appointments ahead of us in Egypt for COP27. And finally, I will say that COP27 must be a success for the North and the south of the planet. We cannot be divided anymore. We must act quickly and together. And France will be there and will take part fully. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Madam Minister, and also thank you to President Macron for bringing this very big announcement indeed, matching, in this case, Norway and the United Kingdom as the largest financiers of the AAAP to date. And again, that's also an invitation to others to join in the coming days and weeks going forward. Let's go to Africa. Africa has the leadership, Africa has the plan, Africa has the commitment, and as Africa has a chairperson of unprecedented boldness and energy and determination, President Macky Sall, what is your takeaway? You came here yesterday. You're now in Rotterdam. You're leaving tomorrow night. What's your takeaway from this meeting, sir?
Thank you so much for your drive, Patrick. I would like to thank everybody. And truly, the advocacy is a humanitarian, humanist, universal advocacy. So thank you to the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Also, thank you for your warm welcome. We said we were a little bit disappointed that some of the leaders of the most developed countries were not here. We would have liked for some of them to be here to ensure that it was a fully interactive exchange. But, you know, maybe we need to push them a little bit and maybe they will take part further to ensure they give us the envelope. As President Macron, we would have said to him, Emmanuel, we really appreciate highly what you've said, that your contribution and to ensure that you contribute to the AAAP. So this morning we had the commitment of Norway with Madam Minister. So I would like to congratulate the Prime Minister here for their warm welcome and for everybody here at the GCA, as well as Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, and also the Patrick from the GCA, and all people who helped to organize and prepare this Rotterdam meeting, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, Miss Georgia from the International Monetary Fund, Mrs. Georgieva, and also from the World Trade Organization. But I also would like to thank all the participants today, multilateral banks, the AFD, the European Bank as well. So thank you so much. And the combined efforts of all have enabled us to create, to develop this AAAP. At the moment, when we talk about huge flooding everywhere around the world, and these are very violent events. Look at Pakistan, at all the damage there, and in Africa, in all countries, we have floods with loss of human life and so forth. It's very difficult. And this is combined with, of course, the crisis due to the war in Ukraine, but also as an aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still ongoing, actually, and which means a fragility for our economies. So this change in nature, this could be changed tomorrow. We go from huge floods to huge, enormous droughts. You know, so these events are extreme and violent. And we're really, it's a non-predictable situation. So that's what farmers tell us. We don't know what nature is going to throw at us. So this is the world situation and the overall situation we are confronted with. Therefore, in my opinion, faced with this climate emergency, obviously contributing to global warming, but I'm not going to go back on this. There is a cause for this global warming, and it's human activity which has created it, this global warming. And this is why we can work together. And developed industrialized countries must be able to mobilize resources on top of what we do in our modest way at our level. We do what we can, but it's still very insufficient. It's not enough. And to ensure we don't go down the same road, we have to finance adaptation. Obviously, it's going to be a race. Africa, of course, is full of fossil fuels, you know, geothermal and so forth. And we have an enormous, infinite solar potential, but as long as we don't control storage of energy, as we can master that, the solar energy will be an additional energy. And it can't, solar energy cannot be our main source of energy. So we need to have backup capacities as well. But we have to be aware that but we have to combine wind energy as well as solar energy. We must have an energy mix, an intelligent, a smart energy mix in Africa. Gas is less polluting than carbonated coal or petrol. So, you know, countries who have petrol, they have to use it. But at the same time, we have fuel. But at the same time, we need to have a mix. And the faster we finance adaptation, we fund adaptation, the faster the planet will be in better health. I wanted to really say thank you for all the commitments made, but we need to convince, Mr. Minister, you need to convince your colleagues in China, the big polluters in Europe and so forth, to further finance adaptation. We can't say in 50 years we've not moved. We mustn't be saying the same thing again. You know, we otherwise the planet will suffer in an extremely grave way. So we have improvements to make. We need to redistribute things. Nowadays, our countries drastically need funding to finance these adaptation projects. We need to really confront the DNS, the cost of goods. You know, the energy prices, which are exploding. It's a lot of violence and a lot of degradation. So it's paramount that we invent new scenarios. And I know that we could have a lot of help with this because we had the chance to have a woman who's a great economist expert and who has great understanding of the various phenomena and of the need we have to change the existing rules by which we work. We need some new regulations, new rules, because we're faced with a new situation. We cannot have the same conventional structures and ways of thinking to solve this issue. Therefore, it is crucial that COP27 will truly be a litmus test. And I hope when Patrick, that we will have the 250 million necessary. I can't remember what it was called, this project, the AAAP, yes, for the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, to ensure that we can, you know, if we can have this $250 million, that's a great start. But we have to find $250 million. I mean, it's not, you know, a huge challenge. Maybe it's not like we're wanting to drink the whole sea, as to do a French saying, but only a little stream. 250 million is not a lot.
Thank you, Mr. President, also on behalf of your fellow presidents here, actually on behalf of the whole African continent, of being so focused on what is needed going forward ahead of COP27. Indeed, the $250 million for the upstream financing facility, terrible technical term, but I mean, it's a fund, is a transmission belt for the AAAP, has to be mobilized. As is, as you indicated this morning, Mr. President, the ADF replenishment of the African Development Bank under the leadership of President Adesina. Chairperson or co-chairpersons, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Feike Sijbesma, maybe some closing reflections from both of you, sir, before we close the meeting. Secretary General, please.
Honorable Prime Minister Mark Rutte, Excellencies, the Presidents of Senegal, Ghana, and TLC, and ministers, colleagues, and above all, I think I can say this for everyone, friends of the Global Center on Adaptation. Prime Minister Mark Rutte, I thank you. I thank you on behalf of the GCA. I thank you on behalf of the millions of people living on the front lines who are suffering today and who cannot be here with us today. Without your leadership, none of us would be here today. You have been visionary in enabling the world to have a global organization focused solely on this greatest challenge facing our planet in fever. I also want to express my deep thanks and admiration to you, President Macky Sall, and to your honorable colleagues, President Akufo-Addo of Ghana and President Tshisekedi, Felix Tshisekedi of Democratic Republic of Congo. Africa is staring down the barrels of this global crisis of the climate, but you have shown the true courage. The courage to set the resilience agenda at the center of your development efforts. And you have put your own money to use in the fight against the climate breakdown. Together, you are leading the African Union, the Climate Vulnerable Forum, the pre-COP to Sharm el-Sheikh. Together, you are an extraordinary coalition for a new way forward for Africa and for the world. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the extraordinary work of Patrick Vercoyen at the helm of this GCA. Both Felix Sivesma and I have been working every day with Patrick. A number of you have been friends of the GCA for some time now. The incredible development of this global organization from day zero, just a few years ago, 4 years ago, when I started, until today, is an accomplishment and testament to tenacity and bold drive of Patrick and his growing team. And I thank you very much and commend your leadership. The world needs this organization like never before. A few weeks ago, I was in the Ukraine, to be more exactly August 16, seeing firsthand the devastation of that crisis. I was horrified by this ruthless killing of people, hundreds, thousands of people by Russian soldiers. I have spoken out and condemned that there must be a process of justice. And I have been always saying that justice will prevail. Today, if not today, tomorrow. If not tomorrow, soon in the near future. I think the whole international community must show solidarity and unity and speak in one voice. And this is what is needed for people of Ukraine. Again, today we have been reminded that we are living together on this planet. Not only has Africa been rocked by the pandemic, not only has it been rocked by the climate crisis, and Africa is the most vulnerable continent. It is also hit by the fallout of the Ukrainian crisis on food, on prices, on energy cost. With the facilitation by the Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Turkish President, there is a Black Sea grain initiative which has been allowing this shipment export to African countries. This is important and this must continue. This crisis in Ukraine has emptied the pockets of the world's poorest and most vulnerable group. Enough is enough. Africa and the international community need an opportunity to confront this crisis together. Fortunately, with the Egypt COP27 climate conference this November, we have that chance. And I'd like to also highly commend the Alok Sharma, chair of the COP26, for his leadership. I hope you will really give good support and guidance to your successor COP27. What we have heard from today from the African leaders, the heads of state, the mayors, the world of business, and the community leaders is that adaptation is an opportunity from growth, prosperity, to do business for a greener and more resilient future. But we have also heard that unless the African COP takes us a step forward on adaptation action, we will miss this crucial opportunity. We cannot squander this moment when we are all living a climate emergency. And the key deliverable that has been outlined for COP27 is to show that the doubling on adaptation finance is happening, and that is flowing into real country-led programs. And the African Adaptation Acceleration Program, AAAP, is Africa's flagship adaptation program. It needs $250 million in addition to funds from its vital upstream program. And it needs $12.5 billion funding by the African Development Bank, New Climate Window for Africa. I think it is entirely possible for the key players to come together behind this for COP27. Certainly, today's summit has clarified the asks, and it has taken us further in terms of the path we need to take between now and Sharm el-Sheikh to ensure results that truly meet Africa's expectations. We have a duty to meet Africa's expectations at the African COP, but fulfilling that duty is also a huge opportunity for us all. This is a smart growth agenda. Working with Africa for greater resilience will deliver results for the world. I want to thank every one of you again for joining hands and minds with us today in Rotterdam. All of us have a role to play in the future of Africa, in the fight against climate breakdown. Before I close, I'd like to add to what Executive Vice President of European Commission, Frans Timmermans, has just said. In my way, I will repeat what he said, in my way, addressing the African challenge. I have been speaking out 1,000 times as a Secretary General. Without addressing the African challenges, we will never be able to say that we are living in a sustainable world. This is what I have been saying and repeating today. I am very reaffirmed by the positive energy and enthusiasm, but above all, with a commitment that you have shown to this day today. We can only do this by working closely all together. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us work together to realize a sustainable world where all of us, succeeding generations, will be able in peace and prosperity. That is your political duty and our moral duty. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now to our last speaker of today, the co-chair of the board of the Global Center on Adaptation, and also the representation of the global private sector, if I may say so, Feike. Feike, you have spoken very passionately this morning on how to mobilize the private sector on the adaptation agenda, where it's still largely missing. What's your takeaway from today?
Well, thank you, Patrick. Let me first say my co-chair, Secretary General Ban, was the one in his previous role who orchestrated the Paris Treaty. And the Paris Treaty went mostly about mitigation. And I would like to say at this Adaptation Summit that we should not give up and should not reduce all our commitments we have given to Secretary General Ban on mitigation by CEOs, by NGOs, and especially by almost 200 leaders of countries around the world. But I agree with Mr. Timmermans that on mitigation we are not moving fast enough and we are not on track. So in parallel, we need to work on adaptation. I'm very pleased with the effort that you African presidents took to come here together with your ministers and to show how serious it is that Africa, who costs the least, is suffering the most, and the responsibility which is therefore also with Western companies, but also with the private sector. Come back on that. So I appreciate your effort. I know some of us said, well, where are the European leaders here? And I would like to say, at least of a not unimportant country, I'm biased, our Prime Minister is here, but let me recognize all the people who are here, like Vijay, like Anne, like our Honourable French Minister, like Alok, like Frans Timmermans, of course, like Remy, many people are here. The international organizations are here also, of course, with the World Bank, the UN, IMF, WTO, the European Investment Bank. So I would like to recognize all the people who put effort into that, and thank you for being here. And I would say, as a good Dutch person, we welcome especially also your financial support, because that is also what we need. But also the commitment of the mayor of Rotterdam, who allows us to be here, of former Prime Minister Balkenende and many others who have contributed to this. With your effort, it is possible for GCA to build on our 3 pillars: agenda setting, advocacy. Secondly, to work on research and development and to find the right solutions, which we can, after having worked them out, spread them around, especially in your countries in Africa, but also other places in the world. And thirdly, to facilitate, coordinate, help the execution of this, amongst others, together with Akim Adesina of the African Development Bank, especially in Africa. Very much appreciated. I mentioned, like Patrick said, there is one thing which is not here at all, and I feel a little bit lonely here with some other people representing the private sector. At the end of the day, 80% of all the money need to come from the private sector. So what we need to do is involve the private sector in the West, but also in the South, and work together to find the right solutions. And what we're doing, and I've been discussing that with Alok and with Mahmoud on the COP27, to mobilize the private sector much more. Mahmoud made me in a very difficult situation here when I indicated to him that I have founded and chair a group of 125 leading companies in the world in the frame of the WEF. And Mahmoud was so pleased, as the Egyptian leader said, "This is so impressive, Mr. Sibisma. 125,000 companies that you lead." I said, no, with 125, I really meant 125. And he said, okay, but maybe at the end of today, we need 125,000 companies to be involved. And I said, okay, I take that misunderstanding as a message and as an order to all of us to be there and to support you further. Thanks very much for being here and making it possible for GCA to do its work. Special thanks to my co-chair, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, and special thanks for, indeed, the tremendous effort, Patrick, you put into this. Without you, we would not sit here, but especially we would not have the solutions which brings us forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you too much, Feike. Everybody, of course, knows that I have written the last part of his speech, obviously. But on a more serious note, I want to thank you, Mr. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and you, Mr. Feike Sibisma, for guiding the whole organization through these very complicated waters indeed. I want to thank all of you indeed for coming to Rotterdam, the adaptation capital of the world indeed. But in particular, I want to thank our African leaders here today. President Macky Sall, you came all the way to Rotterdam for this agenda, for this meeting. President Akufo-Addo, you came all the way from Accra to find solutions for your country, for the African continent, in fact, globally. President Tshisekedi, you came all the way from Kinshasa to find solutions, but also to build partnerships. The President of Ethiopia was with us this morning. We're deeply grateful for her leadership as well. Because today's message was actually, maybe Prime Minister, you weren't here this morning, but the outcome message is very simple. The international community has to deliver for Africa adaptation at the African COP. That's basically the bottom line outcome of today's meeting. I also want to thank particularly African Union Commissioner, Chairperson Moussa Faki for repeating this message across the globe, which is so important. Because we must double down. Yes, we made progress today. Yes, we heard great commitments. There was a little bit of confusion about the commitment from France in the translation, but we take the right translation at some point. They take the highest number indeed. Because the amazing thing is, last year during the summit hosted by Prime Minister Rutte, the African Adaptation Acceleration Program, which is led by President Adesina, was put on the table. Today it's again endorsed and re-endorsed. But now also we are moving with the AAAP in real concrete implementation. So in the doubling down of adaptation finance, that's good for Africa. And as Mr. Timmermans said, that's not only good for Africa, it's also good for the world. And I think in closing this meeting, if I may so, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Mr. Siebesma, I think we all have our homework carved out. De facto, what we have as our homework is calling our friends and the friends of the friends who are not in this room to contribute to this very important program in the next few days and weeks ahead. This morning I told a short story, Mr. Prime Minister Rutte, which was because I went on a visit to Kenya a couple of weeks ago and I met the people from Makwene. And they sang a song and it has one lyric and it said, if you climb a mountain, you find good things on top of this. So let us climb this adaptation mountain together. Because my strong conviction is this, everybody here in this room, this morning I called it the dream team. This is the dream team. I think what separates us from those who are not here today, not because we're naive, not because we're optimists or pessimists, we're incredibly determined. Because adaptation action for Africa is unstoppable. I thank you very much indeed. Let's close this meeting, but let's continue working. My thank you.